G'day, I'm Peter Anthony. Welcome to Growth Tales. I'm delighted today to share a conversation with you I had with Madhu Dasa. He spent 5 years in a monastery in India when he was 18, came out of the monastery and started a business helping originally holistic health businesses scale and grow their businesses. Now he teaches entrepreneurs how to grow and scale businesses. Fascinating conversation. I think you'll really enjoy it. And while you're there, if you'd like to talk to me about coaching for yourself or your organization, reach out to me at peter@peteranthonyconsulting.com. In the meantime, here's Madhu's story. G'day, Madhu. Welcome to Growth Tales. I'm really curious about this balance between entrepreneurship and holistic health, because typically they're in two separate buckets. So how do you see them coming together?
Yeah, well, first off, I'll just say how much I appreciate your approach to these perspectives and how grateful I am for a podcast like the one that you offer, where we can have these conversations, because as you mentioned, it seems like it's so contrarian. Like I'm either spiritual and holistic and into health, or I'm successful and entrepreneurial, and it feels incongruent with one another, right?
Exactly. Like if I talk to my friends that are, say, right into yoga, they are usually people that aren't into entrepreneurship. And if I talk to my business colleagues, they're the sort of people that aren't usually into like holistic health, meditation, yoga, and so forth. They tend to be two separate parallel universes. And what I love about your work is you've quite successfully brought them together. So what came first? Was it the holistic health came first?
Certainly was. And I found this too. And there's a way in which what we do is at the foundation of it is trying to merge these worlds, because there's a way in which neither direction, if you make them mutually exclusive, neither direction is going to actually complete fulfillment. There's always going to be a lacking. Either, I'm struggling financially. I might feel good. I might even feel I feel purposeful. I feel healthy, and I ain't got no money. Or the opposite, which is like, great, I got a bunch of things, but like, I don't have my health, I don't have my purpose. So the crux of everything we do is how to merge these together, because being a monk, I lived as a monk for 5 years, in and out of India, monasteries in India. And the main thing we learned there was like how to live a purposeful life, a holistic life, and clean, strict, all that jazz. But then when I graduated the monastery, I felt good, but I was broke as a joke. And I had to then learn how to supplement the other aspect.
Okay. Was this a Buddhist monastery you're in India?
Actually, a bhakti yoga. So as opposed to, say, more of a traditional, like, say, religious ashram, be it through Buddhism or Jainism or whatever the case might be, bhakti yoga literally means uniting divinely through. Bhakti means love and devotion. So it's a traditional practice from the ancient Vedas, which are the oldest written literatures we know of in the world. The oldest one's called the Rig Veda. It's about approximately 5,000-year-old literature, philosophical text on the conceptions of life and purpose, and what is the human body, what is the nature of consciousness, etc. And so there's different monasteries throughout India where I'd spent 6 months, and then for visa reasons they'd kick me out, and I'd be in different monasteries, or ashrams in Sanskrit we call it, in the West.
Okay. And that was, 6 years, did you say, in the monastery?
5 years, yes. Yeah, 5 years of full monkhood.
Okay. And lots of, what was the practice there? Was it like a meditation practice, a yoga practice? How'd that work?
Yeah, a very simple life. And so what a day in the life would look like: wake up about 3:34, and full monk attire, so shaven head. We wore robes, which makes it really simple and never have to worry about what color I'm wearing today. Orange again. Very simple way of life. And then we spent some time in the morning after waking up doing some private meditation, 2 hours of private meditation. Then we would do some collective meditation. Then we would do some studying for hours, depending on different Vedic literatures or these ancient wisdom texts from India. And, my favorite time of the day, which was then breakfast, and my second favorite time, which was lunch. And and in the same way, we would study throughout the day or do different services. So some people who like to cook, they would cook for us or for all the outreach programs we do. I like to teach, so we go to universities, teach meditation. And in this way, people were engaged according to their psychophysical natures. But the primary focus there was learning sense control and then studying the ancient Vedic arts.
Okay. If that's Ayurvedic?
Yes,
Is
sir.
it like
Ayurveda was actually my
Ayurveda?
direction. That's the direction I took. There's many others. There's the Dhanurveda, which is like martial arts. There's a bunch of different, say, ancient disciplines, and according to one's nature, we follow that. So mine, for instance, was Ayurveda, as you uh,
Okay.
just touched on.
So, so what was it that prompted you to spend 5 years in a monastery? Like, what were you unhappy or unhealthy, or were you searching for something, or what was it that prompted that?
Yeah, all of the above, but really curiosity was at the top of that pile. So, as a child who was always told first it was you have ADD, then it was you have ADHD, you have anxiety, and I was always thrown into all these categories of I'm a this, I'm a that, and it's bewildering. It's depressing to say the least. And you say
Yeah,
depressed, and they're like, "Here's take another pill for that." And
yeah,
I mean, it bothered my parents endlessly, but I was just a kid. We didn't know what to do, and so I was suffering, and I didn't even have it quote unquote that bad. And I always thought to myself, man, if somebody who has a family who loves me, we were quite bare bones poor, but still I had like the necessities. If somebody who's in this situation is so miserable, what must it be to even not have the necessities? So there's a way in which I was just faced with suffering, and I dealt with death. I had a sister who died from at a young age for a drunk driver, and these different opportunities that created a type of existential crisis where I was like, okay, I hate suffering. There's got to be something better than this. And so I studied philosophy and theology from a young age as a teenager. And then I read a book called the Bhagavad Gita, which, for those not familiar, is one of the
yeah,
oldest written
yeah,
literatures that we have in the world from India. And that's what really opened me up to say the concepts of what I call practical spirituality. Not the woo-woo spirituality, but stuff that makes perfect logical sense, that makes life a little bit easier. And then from there, I went down the wormhole. And then on my 18th birthday, I was like, let's do it. I decided to become a monk.
wow. Well, a monk in India.
Yeah, I moved to India, and it's not very typical for an 18-year-old to want to take a vow of celibacy, but it was. I'm happy I did it at that age. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So, so you, because often with decisions like this, there's some drive, there's some
Yeah,
pain, some suffering that's pushing you in that direction. But also often one to two, and I find this a lot in my coaching practice when I'm talking to people. Uh, One of the things I suggest to them is that I'm not teaching you anything.
hmm.
I'm just helping you to find what you know already. And often when there's pain and suffering for a reason because there's an inner self that wants you to be happy and is pointing you in the direction that, and only you can feel that, right? I can't feel it for you. Only you feel that. You obviously felt that when you were a young man. You thought, I need this. And that you had that calling, if you like, if I can use
Yeah,
that word. Is that how your experience of it was?
yeah, and kind of retrospectively understanding how desires really come from deprivation. A want comes from a lack, and vice versa. They feed off
Yeah,
one another, and so there was a way in which, as a desire for to stop suffering, like or
yeah,
minimize
yeah,
suffering, which really means learning suffering comes from the mind, and therefore, to the extent that I can learn to control the mind, I can control my conscious response to life, which in terms
yes,
changes the direction I move in. And so, to the extent I control my mind, I can actually start to control my life more than just
yes,
going on autopilot. Yeah, and
yeah,
so there's a focus on what I can get in terms of mental control, to peace in life, and then a focus on what I don't want, which is, say, suffering and being controlled by the mind.
yeah, yes. It sounds a lot like when I first learned meditation, I learned a Buddhist practice, and it sounds a lot like the Four Noble Truths. Like it's like life is difficult, and life is difficult because of attachment. And attachment drives
Yep.
suffering. It's that letting go piece, and that's where the meditation practice comes from. Well, the one that I was taught, it's that just having a focusing device like the breath
Yep.
and a non-judgmental attitude about what arises in that particular meditation, because anything could arise, and realizing that you're not your thoughts.
Yeah,
You are
such a
someone.
freedom.
You are somebody having thoughts. You're not the thought. So if I'm thinking unhappy thoughts or stressful thoughts, I'm not stressed. I'm just having a stressful thought. It's difficult to get to that understanding until you do a lot of meditation, right? Because you can hear it, but you don't really know it until until you've done it. Was that part of your experience, or was your experience different than that?
Yeah, it's like you could talk about how good honey is all day, but it's not really until you taste it where you're like, oh, I get it. Okay, that's good. That's
Yeah,
sweet. It's
yeah,
yeah, theoretical knowledge only goes so far, and so 100% the practical application is what opens up, say, the full understanding, the full. You could talk about meditation, talk about controlling the mind, but it really takes sitting down, shutting up, turning everything with an off switch off, and
yeah,
doing it and showing up for the actual practice. That's where the
yeah.
say magic happens.
Yeah, yeah, that's where the magic happened. And I find it surprising too, because I recommend to everyone I'm working with to meditate. And if we're in workshops or in one-on-one coaching sessions, I always meditate with them and prescribe it to them. And I'll often ask clients, I'll say, do you meditate? And they'll say, yeah, I tried that once and it didn't work. Right. It's like saying, do you exercise? Yeah, I tried exercise once and it didn't work. You know, or like, are you in love? Yeah, I tried dating somebody once, but it didn't work. I find it really extraordinary just to dismiss it. And I love that word you just used, that practice word. Because when you think about meditation, it is all about practice because you never get it perfect. Right? Or it's rarely
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
even the cool thing too is changing the goalposts from, as you so eloquently said, from perfection to the win is just showing up. The win is just doing it. It's actually doing the practice. And there's a
yeah,
way in
yeah,
which, as you mentioned, people will say, "I've tried meditation, it doesn't work," and I always say to them, "Well, it means you haven't tried the right meditation." And really, the
yeah,
further
yeah,
point is, as you mentioned, that it's just you show up for it. And you can't lift a weight once and be like, expect a muscle, but rather the way we control the mind is by actively sitting down and controlling the thoughts. And when bringing the mind to a point of focus, and whenever it wanders, we bring it back. Whenever it wanders, we bring it back. And that
yeah.
muscle of the mind gets strengthened over the practice of meditation.
Yes, yes, yes. I like that idea. I like to think of it too. It's almost like I'm sitting in a cinema watching a movie, or I'm watching a Netflix show, and I'm very involved in the movie I'm watching. Maybe I'm watching Top Gun, and I'm very involved in the movie. I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling scared. Whatever the movie wants me to feel. It's a bit like my thoughts. I'm I have my thoughts like I imagine I'm watching a movie or watching a Netflix show, and attempt to get some distance between me and my thoughts, and or become aware that I'm the observer of my thoughts. I'm not the thoughts. Like I'm watching a movie or watching a Netflix show,
Yeah.
and try and get a little space, a little bit of a gap between me and the thought. That's what I'm after. That's what I'm. That's the attitude I'm looking for, and that's when the great stuff happens. I'm not quite sure how it happens. It's a bit like flicking on a light switch. Like I don't know how a power station somewhere in Australia has created this electricity that's gone along a wire on a couple of big poles and lands in my office and then turns into light. I don't know how that works, but I know when I flick the switch, the light comes
The
on.
light goes on. Yeah.
But I haven't got to understand it. I don't need to understand the whole bit. I just know that it works. So you spend about 5 years in the monastery, and you come out. You say, enlightened, I'm sure, in a practical way, but you're saying you're broke. Then you think, well, maybe I should try this business thing, right? Right.
Yeah. You got
So
to eat something.
you've got to eat something, yeah, yeah. And I mean, money isn't everything, but it helps most things. I
Yeah.
mean, if you
Money
want to eat,
amplifies, right?
money amplifies. If you want to travel, if you want to eat, if you want to live in a night, I mean, it does help, right? You can't be completely anti capitalism, anti money. There's,
Yeah, there's a
you
place for
know,
that. Go to the forest. Go become a monk in the forest if you want to do that. But unless you want to be an antisocial hermit, which is okay. There's a small percentage of people like go live in the forest and just like do your thing and like somehow maintain. But yeah, for most of us, the majority, it's something that just needs to be worked through because there really is no health without resources. You can't be healthy without quality food, and that costs something. You can't
yeah,
you can't achieve ultimate satisfaction in life without some resources, and the main resource we use nowadays is called money. And so there was a way in which I was struggling trying to live but with no money, and it doesn't work very well.
no, no, it doesn't. And it's. I just said it's a means of exchange, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're all exchanging things, and like how many thousands of years ago people worked out, well, you've got a cow and I've got some butter. How do we swap cows for butter? Well, we can't really. So we're going to invent this currency and exchange things. Now, so what was did you walk straight into your business then, or did you have this idea for the business, or how did that transpire?
Well, the idea was there, and I was pretty committed to how can I do what I love. I spent so much time learning how to actually improve the quality of not only my life, but improve the quality of others' lives as well. There was a way in which I knew how to do the service, but I had no financial education. Knew nothing about finances, sales, marketing, etc. And so I spent about 2 years after graduating the monastery doing good work, and I'm happy and I feel grateful for the work I did, but to no avail financially. I remember I made about $15,000 the first year, collecting pretty much donations, and 18,000 the next. And then I just got fed up. I was like, what the heck? Why is this not working? And really, through a series of experiences, I realized I'm the only thing getting my way. It's just knowledge. Like, it's anyone can make money. Everyone has the same opportunity to make money in the world. And that's if when you hear that, some people might hear that and go, wait, is that true? Yes, and I'll happily explain why. It's that every single person has the opportunity. It just comes down to them learning how to do it, learning the fundamental aspects of how do I create something that people will value enough to exchange money for. And so that's when I said, okay, let me knuckle down. And I spent a lot of time, hours, resources to learn, to say, the money game and how to actually create a sustainable business where I can provide enough value for enough people that, as I like to say, it's like you help people so much that they feel uncomfortable not giving you money for it. Like that's a sustainable business model. And then I created, first it was a 6-figure business, and it worked, just kept growing. And then that's what eventually helped me create the marketing agency we have today, because everyone needs help with marketing, and especially people in the holistic space. As you mentioned, they're like, I'm good at what I'm doing, but sales, marketing. It's like, no problem. We'll just do it for you.
So you're specializing in the sales and marketing, entrepreneurship aspects of businesses that are holistic, or are selling or offering health services, if you like.
Health and wellness business. Yeah. All types of health and wellness businesses. That's the main people. Just because I grew my business there, it's easy for me to talk in that language because I know it works. Whereas, we don't focus really on any other niches, just because that's the thing that I did, and therefore I feel comfortable kind of helping others do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I listen to a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk on the social media marketing part. He keeps saying niche down. If in doubt, niche down. If in doubt, niche down further. And you hear him on podcasts, and he's interviewing people or talking to people, and they talk about these incredibly narrow niches, and he loves it. The more narrow the niche is, the happier he is. That's the way that it works. So what have you learned about what works? Like, if there's someone listening that says, well, I'm really keen on entrepreneurship and understanding how to niche down and grow a business, what have you learned from the holistic space that might be useful for people outside the holistic space?
Yeah, there's so many valuable insights. There's two primarily that I would say are at the foundation of whatever success I've had in the many hundreds of people that we've gotten to work with, or the 100 people we're currently working with, whatever the case might be. Is I would say it always comes down to there's two areas that if these two areas are off, everything else is going to be off, money included. And so number one is service. And what that really means is having a service-based business, which means the focus is on how to give and give and give and be generous, and always try to, the meditation is, how do I over deliver? How do I provide so much value to the people around me without even so much of an expectation of return? We're just giving, as if magically the return will happen on its own. Of course, we want to be strategic and make sure that we create great offers and we have a sales process and all that jazz. But really, it comes down to service as the foundation of the business, because worst case scenario is you wake up every day excited that you changed lives. Best case scenario is you do that and you make some money doing it. So there's a service element. The other aspect is the mindset. And what I find is that people will give so many reasons why they're not making the money they want, and they'll always go to a systems or a strategy or a campaign or They'll blame it to something external. I'm not suggesting those things aren't important. We teach them. Like, I'm a big fan of the systems. However, far more essential for our attention is improving our mindset. And that really means figuring out what our purpose, like what is it that we're actually meant to be doing and sharing, and going all in on that without entertaining limiting beliefs, or at least we should say strategically overcoming limiting beliefs, everything from imposter syndrome to feeling lack of worth or whatever the case might be, taking a strategic approach to overcoming the limiting beliefs so that we can be so fortified mentally in our mindset that we're not going to stop doing this and showing up every day theoretically for the rest of our life. If those two things are there, there's no version of reality where somebody doesn't become successful in different realms.
I'm curious about that. I love both of those ideas. This service idea, this giving idea, this over-delivering idea, that's something I definitely share with you. We are interrupting our conversation with Madhu for a brief word from our sponsor, Peter Anthony Consulting. If you'd like personal coaching on your personal story or how storytelling can work in your organization, reach out to me at peter@peteranthonyconsulting.com. In the meantime, let's get back to Madhu's story. You, and what I've found is that all of my business comes from referrals. And I'm thinking that the referrals come because I delighted the person that I worked with, right? They'll say, look, Peter was great, you should use him. And I get random emails and random phone calls from people that I've never met that were referred by someone that I worked with. And that's the service thing. And that's how I think about clients. When I started my business 23 years ago, I was so grateful for the clients that I over-delivered, and I haven't stopped. And I like that because I sort of feel a bit guilty. Because when you talk about imposter syndrome, I think like I'm speaking at a conference somewhere in the world, or I'm coaching someone running an oil rig in the North Sea, and I'm thinking, who am I to be doing this, right? I think a lot of us feel a bit of that, right? A little bit of imposter syndrome. I think otherwise you're arrogant, aren't you? There's a little bit of that in all of us. Like it's like a little bit of it, like, who am I to be doing this? Or they might find me out. Right?
Yeah. It becomes a this or that. It's either like, oh, I have to. If I'm proud and like, oh, I'm qualified, then I become arrogant. Or if I'm too humble and it really, in the name of humility, people become almost, the word is like self-flagellating of sorts. It's like,
self-deprecating.
Self-deprecating,
Self-deprecating, yeah. It's, and which is also not very attractive.
Yeah.
If someone keeps
it's
putting
somewhere in the
themselves
middle.
down, you want to be somewhere in the middle. You want to be confident enough to go forward, but also, I guess that's where gratitude comes into that service part too. I'm so grateful for this relationship. I want to show my gratitude because I think gratitude's a verb, right? It's what I'm doing, not what I'm saying about how grateful I am.
Well
So
said.
I'm showing my gratitude for you being a client by over delivering or asking you, what else can I do? Or I like to ask, what would make this ideal for you? Like I have been doing it for a long time in many countries. I feel like I understand it, but I'd rather you tell me what's ideal for you. What would make it ideal? And they always tell you something. Like it's often something quite small, but that quite small thing can make a huge difference to them.
Yeah, because when it's connected from a desire, because really everything we do in life comes from a desire. If we look at every habit, every single thing we're doing every day, there's some intrinsic desire that we're wanting that we do that habit to achieve. And every habit comes from a thought and a feeling that is going to theoretically bring us closer to the things that we want. So to the extent that we get in touch with that inner desire, then we're going to have, say, that internal fuel, or we might even argue to say sustainable fuel, to move in the direction that we actually want, as opposed to just what we think we should do, because no one likes to be shoulded on.
That's right.
No one likes to be shoulded.
I'm sure when you're working with your clients and they're selling their services to their clients or to their customers, it's in that buyer relationship or buyer-seller relationship, often people think that after I've made the sale, that's when the relationship ends in a way. Like I've made the sale, and that's when the salesperson's feeling most confident. But the person that just bought, the customer, if you like, or the client, that's when they feel most vulnerable. That's when they're most in doubt of what they've just bought. Like if you just go and buy a new car, you might have looked at cars for a while, you get this great new car, you love it initially, and then you have a lot of doubt about, have I bought the right car, right? Or bought the right guitar, as I can see in your background there. Like you'll love it right up until you buy it, then you'll start getting a lot of doubt. And the customers feel the same way. Like if I'm running a yoga studio and people buy a membership from me, up until the time I buy it, I feel great about that yoga studio. But right afterwards, I thought, have I made the right decision? So I'm most vulnerable right after I've said yes in terms of when I'm buying. So if you're selling to people, the time you've got to over deliver the most is right after they've bought, or right after they've committed to saying yes, because that's when they're feeling most vulnerable about the decision. So that's when the selling almost begins.
Yeah, I would say we often make that point. The sales process begins once they say yes. And because we often share, my personal experience is that the way to know we're succeeding is when clients don't go. And, we kind of pride ourselves on having so little churn, so little people leaving. And there's a way in which people are always trying to chase clients. But rather, if you could just get a great client and you serve them phenomenally and definitely in a way they never want to leave, that's good. Then done deal. And if you do that with enough people, then, we get out of this kind of constantly trying to find new clients. It's like find a way to serve someone indefinitely. And that's really where magic can happen, because as you mentioned, if the sales process starts there and you over deliver and you serve them so well, not only does it make your life easier, but then now you have someone that you get to grow with, and together, synergetically, everyone wins. That's the approach we often like to.
That's right. That's right. If they grow, you grow.
Yeah.
So that's good for you. Plus, if they grow and they become successful, they'll be talking about you and what you've provided to them to similar people. Like they might go to a conference or wherever they are and recommend you. So this guy's great. You should go and talk to these guys. I love that service idea. I also like this mindset idea, and this because in my early days I was very influenced by Tony Robbins and like that take massive action and all that great stuff. And I've walked on fire a couple of times.
Love it.
First by myself. Then a friend of mine was in trouble, so I took him to one of those events at the Date with Destiny for a week with him. So I was very ingrained in that Robbins stuff, right? But I've sort of moved a little bit back from it because I think you needs a bit of balance. But it definitely mindset, because you think when you're making decisions and you're growing a business, you get very stressed. And when you get very stressed, you get very pessimistic, right? You're like
discouraged.
The position in stress is pessimism, and pessimism means you retreat and you don't make decisions, and whereas it almost means the opposite, doesn't it? Is that what you found with mindset?
Yeah, we call it analysis paralysis. There's a way in which people get stuck and paralyzed in a way of which, and this kind of space of lack of clarity. And so the way we always break it down is, what is the next right step? The question I always ask ourselves, like, what's the next right step? Because decision fatigue is what takes out entrepreneurs and business owners. So whether they're the business owner, whether they're the executive or the manager, what actually takes people out is decision fatigue, where they go, there's too much to do, it's overwhelming, I can't make all these, because it becomes so consuming. And so always breaking things down into the easiest steps. I actually keep a little button near me. For those of you watching this, you'll get to see it's a big red button that says easy on it. And it's a store called Staples. Anyway, I saw it many years ago and I got it. And when you press the button, it says,
that was easy.
That was easy. And there's a way in which it's like we always just have to press the easy button. Like, what's the next step in the right direction? And in this way, it can help avoid that stuckness that we can feel of indecision and retreating, and that pessimism and that self-doubt is what's the next step in the right direction.
Yes. And often it doesn't need to be a huge step either. It can be often when I'm working with people, I'll encourage them, I'll ask them, what's the smallest possible thing you could do in this direction? Right. And if you keep doing the small things, they're going to end up moving you in that direction. It's like improving 1% each day. You haven't got to take, like Robbins would suggest, take massive action. And I think, well, maybe massive action is not a great idea, because if you're really unsure of which way it's going, maybe smaller steps are easy to take. Plus, as you take each decision, you learn something, right? You learn something about the path that you're on. Because if you've never done it before, like if you've never run holistic health business or a yoga studio or whatever you're running, you don't know, do you? Unless you picked up a McDonald's franchise and say, here's the franchise system, like you're in a big box gym. Huh?
Yeah, and even still then, it's like there's so much uncertainty, right?
I mean, you've got all the manuals. Here's how to do everything.
Yeah.
Or maybe you buy a big box gym franchise and they tell you how to set it up, where to put everything, and where all the gear is, and how to serve people and how to sell more memberships. That's great, but you still have never done it before, right? So
and I always like this idea. I heard this story. Don't try this at home, friends. There's a way in which in the 70s, there's this gentleman who ate a Volkswagen Bug, the vehicle called the Volkswagen Buggy. You heard that? Yeah, it's crazy. Years ago, what he did is he chopped up every little piece into a small piece of metal, every little screw, and he actually ingested every little piece. I don't know what the other side would. Don't know what it looked like coming out, but he ingested every little piece, and he actually, over the span of I think it was a year, ate a full Volkswagen Bug. And again, not that I think anyone should do that, but the concept is far out that how do you eat a car? Just one small piece at a time. Like you want to eat a car, the most inconceivable thing, just one piece at a time. And that step-by-step process actually opens up the door for something amazing.
Yes. And the other way I like to think about this is I ask myself, what would that person I would like to be do? Like, what decision would he make? Like, if I want to be a great husband or a great father, I think what decision would a great father make right now, right? Or if I want to be a great friend, I think what decision would a great friend make now? What would a great friend do now? And I say, well, they would call him and ask him how he is and how he's traveling and does he need a hand. That's what a great friend would do, and just and then if you do that often enough, you become that person, right?
Well said.
If you think like, what's the next right step in this? I like that next right step, right? With this, and all I've got to do then is just execute, just do it, and push my easy button. That's it.
Just press the easy button. That's right.
just push the easy button. But is there? I love those. I love the simplicity but power of those two. That you're in an active service, so like overgive or over deliver, if you like. And have that mindset of the next right step, and just keep executing. Like keep moving in that direction. Is there anything else you've noticed along the way? Like if there's someone listening here thinking, I'd really like to start a business. I've got this idea, whatever the idea is for the business, wherever it might be. What would you suggest? What would you suggest?
Well, forgive if my answer, guys, sounds macabre. I want to explain why I'm giving this answer, but first and foremost, I would say you're going to die, and we don't know when that is. That could be in a day, a month, a year, 10 years, 100 years, whatever the case might be.
Maybe about 100 years.
It's possible, right? There's a way in which, right? I mean, I don't know how to wish that upon someone, but there's a way in which we don't know when that day is going to come, but it's coming. And if we spend our lives in a place of fear, in a place of procrastination, I'll get to it. It's like when? Tomorrow's never guaranteed. And I say this as kind of a sobering principle of like, that's right, tomorrow's not guaranteed. So why not do something amazing with my life right now? And if we're considering making a business, or, going on that retreat, that vacation, or creating that invention product that we thought of, or having a child, or we could talk about these huge thoughts and conceptions we might have in life, and we say, I'll get to it. But who can say confidently that we're going to have the time to get to it? Rather, we have today, we have right now. And so for those considering this, if you go for your dreams, even if it's not a huge, it doesn't, as you were saying too, it's like, it doesn't have to be a big dream. Like, it doesn't have a big step. Like, even if it's just something that seems like a small win. Like, today is the best time to take action. Right this second is to move, because the worst case scenario is you said, I tried, and you change your mind. You're like, nah, I actually didn't like it. It didn't work. I don't want to do it anymore. You change your mind. Best case scenario is you actually get what you want in your life.
Yeah. And I worked out that didn't work. Like I thought I wanted to go sailing or learn how to sail. I tried learning how to sail. I realized, you know what? I really don't like sailing so much, but at least I crossed it off the list.
Yeah.
And
we tried it.
It's weird. It's weird too. You get more self-respect when you do stuff. Like recently, and by recently I mean a couple of years ago, I started ice baths with some friends of mine, and now we do hot cold protocols, and we blend hot cold therapy with meditation. So we'll do 30, 40 minutes of hot cold, followed by a 10 or 15-minute guided meditation. It takes about an hour in total, because your body is so relaxed right after you've done the hot cold, that the meditation is much stronger and much deeper, particularly in a small group like we do it. But initially, when you get in the cold, you think, wow, this is cold. Yeah, that's the whole point. It's 7 degrees Celsius, right? It's cold. But you just deal with it. Yeah, it's cold. You just deal with it. And then you get that self-respect for having done it. But if you don't do it, you don't get the health benefits, but you lose a bit of self-respect, because all those things you're a bit scared of, anything that's bigger than you, you're smaller than it, right? As you take them on, you get a bit bigger. Like you get a bit stronger, like in your own bones, in your own soul. Have that courage.
Yeah, well said. And to your point earlier too, is that fortunately we're not the mind, we have one, right? We're not our thoughts, we have them. We're not our body, we have a body. And to create that kind of gap, that space between, okay, that's right, I have a mind with thoughts, I have a body. And understanding that differentiation and saying, okay, I'm something beyond the mind, beyond the body. I'm this consciousness, this unit, this self, soul, spirit, whatever term we might want to give it, that thing beyond the mind and the body. When we act from that level beyond, say, the fears of the mind, or just, oh, this is cold, I don't want to do it. When we push past that, that's really where that, I love that dignity, that self-appreciation, that even eventually self-love can come in.
And you can make choices, right? You can choose which thoughts to amplify, and which thoughts to move further away, and start doing that sort of work. And that's when it gets really interesting. And that's when you feel really powerful, not powerful in an arrogant way, but powerful like, hey, that self-respect way.
Totally.
You walk a bit different. I love your approach, Madhu. I love that holistic health and entrepreneurship are blended together. This has been a unique perspective that I've really loved, and I just wanted to thank you for being a guest on Growth Tales today.
Well, thank you for taking all the time, energy, and diligence to create such a beautiful platform that we can have these kinds of conversations. On behalf of everyone that listens to this, we'll say that it's so beautiful, the labor of love it takes to keep something like this going, and I'm so grateful for what you're sharing, brother.
Sure, you loved that conversation with Madhu. I loved the way he thinks about the world. He thinks about it you can tell he spent 5 years in a monastery just by the energy and his peace and the way that he sees the world. I love those key ideas of service and mindset, and how he thinks about that, and how he thinks about the clients he's working with. And it's no surprise he's running a globally successful business. If you'd like to reach out to Madhu, I'll leave his contact details in the show notes. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can find me at peteranthonyconsulting.com. I'll see you next time on Growth Tales.